Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. I'm Gino Buccola alongside David Aragona. We're going to head on out to Aqueduct for a preview of the Grade 2 Demoiselle. Before we do, though, if you could head on down and subscribe to the YouTube channel, that would be a big help for us. David, as we head on out, we hope that Bobby and his grandma don't hit too much traffic as they're gallivanting all around New York this weekend. I'm maybe going to hit the look at the tree, maybe catch some races. Who knows? You and I are going to hope to catch a winner in the Demoiselle there. And Muhimma looks to be the heavy favorite. She's enlisted at 4 to 5 on the morning line for Brad Cox, a barn that feels like they've had this winning streak now for like 3-4 months that just keeps getting longer and longer. She's definitely the one to beat in here, but we have 9 other 2-year-olds that are lined up, and we see how these horses can develop, can improve from one start to the next. So never a sure thing, even with a horse like Muhimma.
Yeah, Muhimma has garnered a lot of hype out of her first couple of victories at Churchill Downs, so she is going to be a pretty heavy favorite in this race, stretching out to the 9 furlongs for the first time. And as we talked about in our preview of the Remsen that you can also find on DRF's YouTube channel, distance is going to be the real question for a lot of these 2-year-old fillies who have never gone this far before, and some of them have some major stamina questions to answer.
See what the Timeform US pace projector thinks about this race and how it may shape up. They do have Muhimma pushing the pace in a fast pace. Muhimma draws the rail again, and that could be a little tricky here where you have a lot of horses to her outside that have shown some speed before and that have been forwardly placed. Liam in the Dust is one of them who wasn't too far out of it in the first couple starts. Michelle, another, and Beauty Reigns all have been pretty close early on. So not really a shock, David, in races like this to see the fast early pace because you have these 2-year-olds. They've all been going short, and now they're all going to have to stretch out. So we kind of project them to be a little closer early on, too.
Yeah, I think the plan is pretty clear from Muhimma drawing the inside here. They've got to be pretty aggressive with her, even having some concerns about getting the distance. You want to try to make the front with this filly because there is some speed to the outside, but horses that aren't necessarily confirmed front runners, and I wouldn't want to get caught in behind those horses as a heavy favorite, putting her in an unfamiliar position for the first time. So I would imagine she'll be setting the pace. We'll see how much pressure that she gets. If she maintains her form, she's definitely the one to beat.
Okay, let's start with Muhimma now down on the inside. So 2 buyer speed figures that are faster than I think anyone's run in the field. But when we look at the trips that she's got, David, that's where I get a little concerned because both of the wins have been when she sat just to the outside of horses, getting the trips that she wanted, kind of soft front end trips. And I just don't know if she's going to get that here down on the inside. She'll likely be down inside of horses. And it feels like it'll be a very different trip for a horse who's going to be a short price.
Yeah, I mean, just the stretch out in distance, I think, dictates it's going to be a different trip in new circumstances for Muhimma, and that's the big question for her. From a talent standpoint, she's shown the most so far. I mean, she's won both starts very impressively. I mean, you watch those replays, and it's the kind of performances that gets racing fans excited because she's just geared down to the wire. She wins like she's so much better than her competition, but those were one-turn sprint races, like you said, just has a lot of natural speed, was able to get up close to the pace and just kind of put those fields away. We'll see if it's the same story stretching out to this demanding 9 furlong distance. There is some route pedigree on the dam side, though her dam was a turf router, not so much a dirt horse. The top side, she's by Munnings, a very versatile sire, kind of from that Speightstown line of getting horses that can go short and long. But you generally think of Munnings as a sire more of, one-turn horses that can get up to a mile. We'll see if the 9 furlongs is a problem. I did find an interesting statistic for trainer Brad Cox, looking up some stats in DRF Formulator. And over the past 5 years, with horses trying a route for the first time on the dirt in graded stakes, Brad is 4 for 28. That's a 14% win rate, which is significantly lower than his overall win percentage, with just a 98-cent ROI. A lot of short prices in the sample that are not winning at the rate you'd expect. And Gino, it's pretty tough to find negative stats for Brad Cox because he does well in so many categories. So every time I do come across one, I think it's significant.
And that's a decent sample, too. We're not talking about a 5-horse sample size either. We're talking about 28. So we've got a good look at horses in this situation. And the key was value, right? Like these horses are over bet. So we're usually just going to get shorter prices than we should on a lot of these horses, win or lose. And this one will be a short price. So do you want to take that very, very short price under those circumstances? It's up to you. I don't think you and I are going to do that on the win end, at least in here. Because right next door, Liam in the Dust is a horse who showed a lot more early speed in those first few starts of her career. David, that most recent race, she was second behind Muhimma at Churchill Downs, but she didn't really have a chance with the way that race shaped up. Muhimma was sitting a perfect trip, was much closer early on, and I would expect them to try to get Liam in the Dust maybe a little more forward like she was earlier in her career.
Yeah, I don't think they wanted to be as far back as she was last time. She actually broke right towards the front that day and just got a little bit outrun through the early stages. Even though she led from gate to wire on debut, it was a relatively slow pace that day at Ellis Park. And I don't think she's the kind of horse that necessarily needs to be on the lead. And I think she showed that last time as she got outrun down the backstretch, but never gave up and was really running on through the lane, was actually finishing across the wire a little bit better than Muhimma was, and started to gallop out pretty well before Luan Machado, put the brakes on about an eighth of a mile past the wire that day. She strikes me as one that is not going to have problems with the distance. And I know you might look at her Alcibiades and say, well, you're crazy for saying that because her 1-2 turn race was a disaster. That performance is not nearly as bad as it looks. Go watch the replay. She was starting to fade a little bit around the far turn and got completely cut off by a rival. And Flavien Prat had to snatch her up and basically drag her to the back of the pack and just eased her home. That, what is 40 something length margin of defeat.
Put a line right through it.
Huge exaggeration. It's not representative of her form. She's got pedigree to go longer. Her second dam was a confirmed dirt router. She is a daughter of Liam's Map, who is a long striding type who just looks to me like one who's going to appreciate added ground. I think she can outrun her odds here.
Next one is Fortuna Mia, who comes off a fourth place finish in the Tempted last out. She'll make the second start back after a short break. Lost to a horse named Stunner, who came back as a heavy favorite and lost against Florida Bred Stakes Company on Saturday, but the runner-up in that race came back and was very impressive at Churchill Downs, winning the Fern Creek with an 84 Beyer speed figure and impulse base. So you go kind of both ways with the race that she exits last time out. I just think she's going to have to get a little bit faster, but distance-wise, she seems like a horse who should have no problem getting a mile and an eighth in here. What do you think about Fortuna Mia in this spot?
Yeah, we'll see if the distance is going to be good or bad for her. The progeny of Vekoma, I think we're still learning about how far they ultimately want to go after that sire had so much precocity in the first half of this season as a freshman sire. She was purchased for quite a bit of money after her first couple starts. I think $160,000 at auction by Linda Rice and New Connections, and hasn't quite paid off yet. She's finished fifth and fourth in a couple of stakes races, did run a faster number in the Tempted last time, as you said. So maybe that's some evidence that added distance is going to be working for her. I think she's going to have to take another pretty significant step forward here to upset this field, though, but she does figure to be a price.
Next one is Carmen's Candy Jar, who will add the blinkers. She comes out of a New York bred stakes races. She was behind a horse named With the Angels in the last couple races, who was 4 for 4 New York bred and a 3-time New York bred stakes winner, has earned Beyer speed figures of 82 and 89. David, if she was in this race, she'd probably be one of the top 2 betting choices, right?
For sure. With the Angels was actually nominated to the Demoiselle. They decided to go in a shorter New York bred stakes race instead, which she did win. Carmen's Candy Jar, no match for that rival in the last couple of meetings. She has stayed on well, though. She's an honest sort who's fairly consistent, shows up every time and gets a piece of it, but she's been running speed figures that are just lower than what's required to be effective in this race, and I wonder how much upside she has at this point, or now her 6th career start.
She always will probably take a little bit of money with those connections too. This is a Pletcher, Rapoli, Irad, so you're never really sure if you're going to get all the value we would want with a horse like this. We move to Michelle, who was a winner over at Laurel Park in the debut. I thought visually, not a bad race. She had a fine start. She was sitting about 3 lengths off. She was on the outside. She moves up to second. She was chasing a lone speed winner that day. And this gal went up alongside and pushed by, opened up, was geared down. I thought everything was really nice. Only problem was that was going 6 furlongs, and now she's going to have to go from 6 furlongs all the way to a mile and an eighth and take a big step up and face, a lot tougher horses in here. But from a pure talent standpoint, this is a really good barn, and this horse, I think, has some ability. It's just a lot to ask in this second start.
Yeah, you look at her pedigree and you could make the case that the added distance is really supposed to work for her. She's by Street Sense, and the dam is a half-sister to Preakness winner Oxbow. You go a little deeper into the female family, the second dam is a full sister to Breeders' Cup Classic winner Tisnow. So there is a lot of dirt route pedigree on the bottom side. The problem for me is I go back to watch that replay at Laurel. While you said what you say is true, she won that race dominantly. her stride is really short and choppy, and just physically in that replay to me, she looked like a pure sprinter, and maybe not a horse that's taken after those female side bloodlines. So I had some questions about her stretching out in distance, and she's going to have to improve a lot.
Next one up, Bless the Broken, is the number 6. The blinkers come off for this one, third start of the form cycle. Comes over from Churchill Downs. She's run 3 times. 2 of them have been very good. The one, you could probably put a line through when she got floated wide, coming off a little bit of the break at Keeneland. And I just thought she had some legitimate trouble in that start last time out, David, over at Churchill Downs. What do you think about Bless the Broken in this spot here?
Yeah, she was pushed kind of wide coming around the far turn and was still staying on well. It did kind of feel like a battle of attrition at the end of that race where a lot of horses were fading, maybe not loving the 2-turn distance at Churchill that day. But she and the eventual winner did stay on pretty well to the wire. She just barely lost in a head bob. She's another one that hasn't run that fast yet, but she does have that foundation of the 2-turn experience. And I never want to be too dismissive of William Walden's trainees because he's had a lot of success this year, including success shipping horses to the Naira circuit.
5 Aside is the next one we'll take a look at. This horse was in the Tempted last time out, but was 58-1 in that race when was well defeated in there. Talked about the race, though, as Stunner and Impulse Buy have both come back to run last weekend. One was a winner, one was disappointing. 5 Aside gets Joel Rosario to jump aboard at 20-1. Do you think this horse fits in here?
Yeah, I know you mentioned Impulse Buy came back to repeat her figure and win a stakes in her next start, but you look through the other runners in that Tempted Stakes, and a lot of them got speed figures that weren't really in line with their prior form. A lot of the also rans that finished behind the top 2, you just look at the PPs with Fortuna Mia and now 5 Aside, and you see that same trend. So I take the figure for that race with a bit of a grain of salt, and based on her prior form, she would just need a huge step forward.
Next one, Beauty Reigns, lightly raced for Belmont, won the career debut on November the 8th at Belmont at Aqueduct. And I thought showed some sneaky ability there. The horse was forwardly placed, had a good start, moved to the lead, kind of drifted out at the top of the lane, but was headed and then battled back. And after kind of putting away the rival, looked like there was some more bottom to this horse. And I think distance should be fine. This is a lot to ask, though, going from 6.5 to a mile and an eighth. But I think this is one of the more talented horses in the field, David, here with Beauty Reigns.
Yeah, she's got a very similar profile to Bill Mott's starter in the Remsen, Tux, who is likely to attract some support, both winning their maiden races at Aqueduct against fields of suspect quality. I don't think we know a whole lot about the horses that Beauty Reigns was beating. They were primarily first-time starters behind her that day. But like you said, she showed some grit to dig in along the inside of that horse that was challenging her at the 8th pole, put that one away to win. She's by Into Mischief, but there is some stamina on the bottom side, the dam being by Tappet. The dam's a half-sister to Victory Way, who was a high buyer allowance winner going a mile. So there is some pedigree for this one to go a little bit further. Bill Mott has good numbers stretching horses out off maiden wins like this. So I won't be surprised when she runs well. I would just want a decent price on her.
Tip Line, we move to next. Blinkers come on for Tip Line, coming off a 7th place finish in the Tempted. And as we go through the Tempted, we weren't really all that impressed with a lot of the horses that maybe come out of the Tempted. And Tip Line was really overmatched in that group. Just feels like this one's going to have to get a lot faster and a real form reversal to compete with this group.
Yeah, you would think that there are some physical flaws to this one to have the pedigree that she does and only have sold for $8,000 at auction prior to her debut. And you watch that debut race and you can kind of see it. She's got a really ugly action with paddling with her left front and just not a pretty mover. Got the job done against a weak field on debut, but was badly overmatched in the Tempted.
The real wild card in this field rounds out the field. Ballerina D'Oro adds the blinkers for Chad Brown. Dylan Davis, off a really great 2024, is aboard. This one will try the dirt for the first time. She lost to a horse named Mayday Ready twice in her turf races. Mayday Ready came back and finished second in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf. So that was a really nice horse who's come back and showed that Ballerina D'Oro was in tough a couple times. And if you're looking at pedigree, Ballerina D'Oro is a half sib to a horse named Blue Light, who is a 7-time winner on the dirt, won a second-level allowance race at Keeneland. For me, the lack of speed kind of hurts this one. Don't really have too many concerns about the distance. What do you think about Ballerina D'Oro on the outside?
Yeah, I think that last point that you made is the key one. It doesn't feel like she's going to have any problem getting this two-turn mile and an eighth. She's got that foundation of the two-turn turf races under her belt, and the dirt might not be a big problem for her. I mean, you mentioned the pedigree. She's bred for dirt. Chad Brown, when he gets a daughter of Medaglia d'Oro in his bar, not a surprise that he's going to start one out on the turf because that sire has so much success with his turf runners. But Ballerina d'Oro, you watch some of her workouts back to Saratoga. She was working really well on the dirt. Maybe this is the surface that she's always supposed to have been on. The problem is she's going out for connections that are just going to take money by default. So I wonder how big a price she's really going to be in this field. But I won't be surprised when she is staying on well at the end.
Yeah, she's a type of horse who I think if I'm playing pick fours and pick fives, I want her on the ticket because she's such a wild card X factor. I'm probably not going to get there betting her to win myself, but she is the type of horse who you don't want to be beating you, especially if you have strong opinions maybe in some of the other races. Let's see what our opinion was in this one, David. Where did you land with selections?
Yeah, I think we both recognize that Muhimma is the most likely winner of this race. Just in this field, she's going to be a heavy, heavy favorite, a really short price for a horse that's trying something new for the first time. And I'm just always inclined to take shots against horses like that. And I just think that the number 2, Liam in the Dust, has run better than it looks on a few occasions. And she strikes me as one that is going to get this added distance, and she'll probably be the right price.
Yeah, she should be fair price there. 2-1, 10-8 for David. I'll put the 8 Beauty Reigns on top. I think there's a little more from that one. We both have Muhimma in the second spot, and then some prices for me underneath with Michelle and Breast the Broken, who I think could maybe round out some of the tries and supers at some decent value. However you're playing the Demoiselle on Saturday at Aqueduct, we wish you the best of luck.
Hey buddy, you look like you're in need of a winner, and just remember, if you like and subscribe right over here, you can get all of the great content on DRF.com, including Race of the Day, stakes previews, and lots more, featuring me and my superb selections. Trust me, you're not going to regret it.